This is Cordially Yours with Charles McPherson on Sirius XM, Canada Talks, Channel 167.
Hello. Welcome to Cordially Yours. Today I have Shoshana Weissmann, and she is going to tell us about this incredible app, which is called T, but not just about the app and why it's interesting, but more importantly, because there was a breach that actually really created a big scandal. And Shoshana has written about it and has talked about it, and she's an expert. And so first and foremost, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So how did you, first of all, let's talk about your background. How did you learn about apps and things like that? Or is it just you happen to talk about this and you have no connection of the internet world in any way?
Oh, that's funny. It's funny to think about it in that context. So I've always loved doing digital media for different organizations, and that's always been a deep love of mine. I actually probably got into apps a little bit late. I tend to like the website version of things a little bit more, but over the years you get them, and in America there's just a lot of laws and bills and proposals that are trying to force users to verify their ages online. So now I have to test out different things and figure out, like, if a breach happens, what kind of app was it? Why did it happen? And what are the implications for public policy? So I also do tech policy for the R Street Institute. So kind of my two loves of digital media and policy have come together here. And last week there was a huge breach of this app, and it blew me away. All their age verification data of a lot of users was breached, which means like government IDs and their selfies, which creates huge risk. So I hadn't used the app myself before, but once this came out, I started playing around with it.
So why don't we tell everyone what the app is and what it does? Because I think that you and I are in the know, but I don't know if our listeners are.
So this actually combines a third expertise of mine, horrible dating experiences. So basically, it's an app created to help women figure out things about men they're going to date. If there's dangers, if they're cheating, basically to try to keep women safe. The founder had written about that he started it because his mom had had some really bad dating experiences and some dangerous dating experiences. So he wanted to create a place for women to be able to come together and keep each other safe. But that didn't work out so great.
So let me start by asking you, so if you said, unfortunately, that you're an expert in perhaps in dating, because maybe it wasn't so successful, do you think this kind of app, first of all, is even necessary to be able to have an app where you can talk about people?
So it's tough because I get why people want to use this, and I get that there's going to be stuff on the app that is useful for women finding out, oh my gosh, my boyfriend's cheating, and that can lead them to real risk of STDs and other things like that, or that someone's violent. But it's also naturally going to bring in a lot of not helpful stuff, just regular gossip or just talking meanly about men to no end. I haven't used the app myself, so I don't really know what percentage of each kind of content the app is. I get the desire for it, and I wish there was an easier way to make stuff better, but I just don't think apps like these are the right solution.
So I'm actually happy to hear you say that. It's not because I want to beat up on the app, this particular app, but I think that, and I love your opinion. I thought the internet was created to try to be a tool to help us to connect, to be able to share information, and to be a better society. And I think philosophically, I'm not so sure if that's what's really happening with the internet in the end. And so when I see an app where, you can comment, whether you comment anonymously or not, I don't know if it makes us better. I don't know if it's truly helping people, or, maybe it's just someone who just has, is upset with someone who then, uses it as a vengeance tool. And so I struggle. So what do you think?
I mean, it's both. The internet just brings out all things and all people, I think. It's funny. I'm really not against anonymous speech at all, though.
Really?
The study is showing that people who use their identities are actually a lot worse behaved online than people who are anonymous. It's an assumption we make, and understandably, because we see mean anonymous accounts sometimes, but we also see real people saying, terrible things online. And also anonymous speech has a lot of uses, like whether it's whistleblowers or people who want to share genuine information to try to help others, or people who want to explore things but are afraid of having their identities tied to them. Like if you're seeking out information about a divorce, you might want to stay anonymous but seek out helpful information. Or if you're dealing with like a medical struggle or mental health issues. There's a lot of reasons people want to stay anonymous online, and I think it can be used in really good ways. I've actually received a lot of helpful information from anonymous accounts over time, but it definitely doesn't mean that it's all going to be productive. Like here, though, some of the women were anonymous, but the way that the data breach happened means they're no longer anonymous. And I do think that has implications too. Like when you post online, even if you think you're anonymous, you might not always be. You never know what data is being collected about you. And you always want to be careful that way too.
I don't think there's anyone who can truly believe that the internet is safe and where you can stay anonymous. I think that there's, like, to your point, there's always the ability of a breach of some kind or something leaking. But I guess so this is where maybe you and I differ, and that's okay. I like that you state your opinion. I personally am of the perspective that if you're going to say something positive or negative, you must therefore believe in it. So therefore you must be confident to put your name beside it. So that's my first point. But I do agree that there is a time for privacy, whether it's a medical issue or a mental health issue, where maybe you want to share some information, but you don't want to necessarily relate it to yourself. So I understand the ability or the need for some things to remain anonymous, and you and I agree on that completely. But I just think that when people are posting in general and they're anonymous, I don't personally take what they say seriously, because I think to myself, if you're not prepared to put your name beside it, then I don't know if you're being sincere or if you're just venting or you're having a bad day. And so that's kind of where I come at it from.
Sure. And I think there's also different pieces within there too. Like I've had people with their identities attached, like lash out at me in really weird ways online. But then also anonymous people help me out with various information saying like, hey, I can't tell you who I am, but if you're doing research on this, you might want to look here and stuff like that.
So I love that. So I love that kind of like that whistleblower or that anonymous tip. I support that 100% because, Sally, who works in whatever agency or whatever business or whatever her situation in life, isn't going to come clean to you because she doesn't want everyone to know who she is. So I get that. And I think that makes total sense. And I see anonymity, for example, in the media business kind of thing, or to your point, to whistleblowers. But I just, like, for example, I have a subscription to the New York Times, and I often will put a comment on something like that, and I never hesitate to put my name beside it, because I say to myself, if I'm going to have an opinion on an article, I feel like I want people to take me seriously, so therefore I put my name beside it. And I'm very comfortable with that. But I just think that a lot of people, and I think your statistics are maybe showing differently, which I'm fascinated by, but I think people, because they're anonymous, sometimes they'll say things that are meaner that they're said in a meaner way than they should be, or they attack people because of a belief or whatever, but they do it viciously because they think no one's going to know who they are.
Oh, sure. But I just see plenty of that with people's identities attached too. Just people online can be really mean sometimes.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. People online can be mean. So, okay, so let's go back to the app and so this data breach. And so I can only imagine how uncomfortable it would be if you post something about this person that you dated, and you're maybe being really truthful. You're saying, he picks his nose at the table or whatever, something like, really gross. And you don't necessarily want him to find out, but to your point, the app is so that other people are aware of it, so that they can make a decision about, if that's important to them or not. But then all of a sudden for that data breach to happen and now that to come out can be really embarrassing. Because maybe this is a coworker, maybe it's someone who lives on your street or in your social circle, and so now everybody knows, kind of scenario.
So what's been tough about it too is like I'm sure there's like inane stuff about like nose picking and stuff like that too, but a lot of it is women posting about violence, posting about stalking, cheating, and stuff like that. And what happened in the data breach too was it wasn't even just government IDs and selfies, but the selfies often had identifying information attached to the files showing their location. So a bad actor took that and made a map of all these women. So now women who in some cases might have been fearing for their lives, trying to find out information or trying to save other women from similar things, there's a map of all these women because of like the poor practices of this app.
I think that's horrible at the thought that now these women are in danger. And I don't understand how the person who makes this app, or the map, I should say, why do they think that that's acceptable to be able to expose people like that and potentially harm them? I struggle with that.
Oh, Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just terrible people. It's actually really interesting because the breach was exposed on 4chan, which is a forum of not always, but often Nazis and just misogynists and stuff like that. But it was actually very informative. The way the person posted the information, I'm not sure if he deleted the post or if it got taken down because it violated rules, which I'm a little doubtful of. But it was helpful to expose the breach because then women were able to go in and protect themselves. But also exposing the breach to everyone is also not helpful for those women for the same reasons. And obviously they didn't have their best interest in mind. And these are generally men who don't see any value of the app and don't have any sympathy for the women's experiences.
I just can't imagine. I can't imagine when there's so the way I look at this app, if it's women being able to talk about, perhaps someone was violent towards them or disrespectful or made them feel uncomfortable or in fear. So I love that app as the idea to be able to protect you, to be able to help you be safer, because going on a date isn't necessarily safe. Or, when you start to date someone, you don't really know who they are, and then you invite them to your house or you go to their house at some point, and then, unfortunately, sometimes bad things happen, which is really sad. But I love the idea of it being there to help. And I have trouble with why would somebody, and the only thing I can think of is that someone who is vengeful or mean-spirited because they aren't a good person to begin with, and someone said something bad about them, and so they've exploited this application.
Oh, totally. I mean, also, I really put a lot of the fault on the app itself. The way it was built was ridiculous. It's like, functionally what it was is that they stored this information in basically an open folder where anyone could find the folder and then enter the folder to take out this information. And when you're creating an app, especially for people who are vulnerable, who expect to be anonymous, you have a high duty here. And for me, I'm worried about a lot more of this stuff happening because people will always exploit vulnerabilities or poor structure of apps and websites that allow this kind of thing. So we should always expect that's going to happen. But to build an app in this way is crazy. And we also have our government. I'm not sure if Canada's government is on this yet, but in America, our governments are trying to instill age verification for apps, for websites. And last year, there was a huge data breach of basically every big tech companies because they were using this age verifier called Authentics. And it breached, it was left open for a year and a half. Anyone with the username and password that was posted online was able to access it. So we don't know what the consequences of that breach were. But to me, it's stuff like this is really scary, that the government knows that these breaches are happening. They're trying to encourage more of this. And in T-App's case, you kind of understand why they wanted to make sure someone was 18 or older and also a woman to make sure that it could be a tighter community. But the way they handled it was just ridiculous. And then we have the government about to amplify more of this. And bad actors are always going to misuse it. They're not going to report these breaches to companies. They're going to use it for fraud or just harm in other ways. So to me, it's just, I'm scared that we're going to see a lot more of this from a lot more apps and websites.
For those of you that are just tuning in, you're listening to Quarterly Yours, and I'm your host, Charles McPherson, and I have Shoshana Weissmann here. And we're talking about the app, the T-App, which is an app for women to be able to anonymously go and post information about someone that they have dated that has not been a positive experience. And so, as great as it is, there was this great data breach. And so let me go back to you, Shoshana. Can people who create apps make them to be safe, do you think? Or is there always going to be the ability to breach them?
No, that's a great question. I mean, honestly, I think there's always going to be that risk, but you can build it a lot safer. One, don't store the data. And their terms of service said that they weren't storing the age and identity verification data that they were. So following your own terms of service is a good way to go. But also, even if they're storing things right, even if they're not storing things, if they're handling it better, you can always have attacks at the front end when someone is uploading their ID, if their phone has malware or other harmful code on it. You never know how good the age verification provider you're going to use is. Authentics was trusted by just about every big tech company, and they were storing people's data in a really easily accessible folder, and people got in there. And there's always going to be a risk. There's always going to be flaws in code or new code that can intercept other code. It's it's always a tough situation. So I think data minimization is just always a good principle no matter what. And people understanding the risk of like anything you say online could be breached one day, anything you upload could be breached. So it's tough because we don't want to stop apps from being able to advance society, but we also don't want to create more risk than there has to be.
So something I don't understand. So you're talking about age verification becoming important and how the government is going in that direction. So I support that, particularly if it's an adult style website or, sensitive information. So I get that 100%. But if you have an app and you go onto it and you verify your age, that you're 18 plus, to be able to see the content, to participate in the content, which is great. If the company doesn't keep that information on file, then how do they know that, 3 years from now, that Shoshana really is 18 and above to be able to be on their site because they haven't kept that proof?
Oh, totally. I mean, that's one thing in general, that at first a lot of these laws required that all this information was maintained, which creates more of a risk. And now a lot of these laws don't require as much, but that doesn't mean that, one, it doesn't mean that like the companies won't do it for compliance reasons. And even if they require it's deleted, how will the government know that they're actually deleting that data? Because the T app said it was, I think Authentics was supposed to have as well, and neither of them were deleting that data. And then, like you're saying, like they could just create accounts, hand them over to other people for money. I mean, like this stuff happens all the time. I just don't think lawmakers understand the risk in that and all the different ways around this. I mean, with VPNs, like we're watching the UK implement their Online Safety Act, and everyone's just getting around it using stills from a video game, Death Stranding, which is crazy that is fooling age verification apps. But also VPNs, they just want to get around it and they don't want to have to verify their age. There's a million ways around these things.
Right.
And to me, it's like lawmakers have the responsibility to make sure that laws are going to be effective and safe and not make things worse than they are. And I just don't think these laws are going to manage that.
But do you not think that where the government is concerned when it comes to the laws for safety, but let's not talk about safety because safety could be wearing a seatbelt or a type of medication. So let's put that kind of safety aside and let's just focus on safety on the internet or the internet generally. Congress is behind society, behind the techs in understanding how it works, understanding the flaws. And so how are they supposed to govern something when they don't understand it? That to me has been something that's been on my mind for a long time, of trying to understand how we can ask them to be responsible when they don't know anything about it.
It sucks. It's tough. It's just not a great situation because everyone, I mean, unless you work in tech, you're always going to be behind it too. But especially like with the amount of advancement we see all the time, they're just always going to be behind it. And having experts helps. We used to have the Office of Technology Assessment, which we got rid of in the 90s, which is too bad because it was useful in diving deeper into these kinds of things. But even there have been some really great reports from, I'm trying to remember if it was the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, or some other office. It actually might have been a Congressional Research Service report that got into all of the flaws in not age verification broadly, but in the identity that exists and ways to verify age. And it doesn't seem like anyone in Congress read it. It's a really great report. It gets into some of the same stuff that I've actually said before. And Congress just wants to do the things it wants to do. Lawmakers often just want to find a way there. So sometimes it's not even that they don't understand the technology, it's that they want to do what they want to do, and they won't accept the existence of barriers in their way to getting there. And in technology, that ends up being a big deal when the technological barriers are high or the risk of cyber attacks or breaches are high. They just don't seem to take that into account. And in a lot of cases, they don't take the First Amendment into account either. Some of these age verification bills have said that they wanted to gate kids from being able to access violent content on social media. But violent content could be footage of wars, news, things that they could go to any other news website and access. In the UK, you have them saying that they should block kids from accessing, basically if you make it look like a fictional character has been attacked violently. But that would include episodes of SpongeBob. It's just, there's not a lot of coherence in this. And sometimes they just worry so much about something and have the goal of protecting kids online to the point where they're not thinking about the logistics involved.
I think that there's an age of innocence when a child is young. And as they grow up and they become more mature, then they're ready to be able to handle whether it's more mature topics. That's how I'm going to put it. They're able to more mature topics. And every child, I think, ages differently. But I think that sometimes restriction is good, obviously, because some things have to be age sensitive. But then I think sometimes we try to restrict too much. And I don't know if that's always helpful. I think that sometimes the pendulum can go too far the other way. But I think you made a really good point just now, and that is, no matter how we try to do the laws, no matter how we try to structure it, it becomes very difficult because if it's about violence, there are some images or some movies of world wars that are horrific, that are really, really terrible. So does that mean that we shouldn't be able to see that because of the violence that we see in that news footage, but that it's actually a historical issue, which is why it becomes important, I think, for us as a society not to forget things, to see things as painful as they are. And so I don't know if we'll ever be able to solve this problem. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it just has to be up to parents. They know when their kids are ready to see things. And this isn't something that the government can figure out or just parse out the internet to figure out. And it's frustrating that they just want to block kids from accessing stuff that they broadly find distasteful rather than figure out, like, when is this kid ready for this information and who's best to make that decision. And so much of this takes parents out of charge, saying, okay, well, you have to upload your government ID, your social security number, your face scan in order to allow your child access to stuff. And it also requires age verification on the part of the child. But in America, kids don't have IDs and face scans are often off by years. And even when these laws create categories of different ages, some 13-year-olds act more like 18-year-olds and some 16-year-olds act more like 12-year-olds. It just really has to be up to the parent. If the child gets nightmares from watching violent content, then it's not for them. But if they're okay with that, but need to be blocked from other things, it's just so individualistic that I don't think we can create these broad laws to figure this out.
I agree with you 100%. I don't think that we can have a broad law. I think that we are stuck being able to generalize some things, and it is up to the parents. And I'm not a parent. I have two nephews, and I think to myself, if I was their father, if I was their parent, I don't know when I would give them a cell phone. And I know we're not talking about cell phones specifically, but a cell phone today is a computer. It's not a phone. And with your cell phone, you have the ability to access so much information. And so here you are as a parent thinking to yourself, I'm going to allow my child to have a cell phone so that I can get a hold of them or they can get a hold of me from a safety perspective. And yet they have access to everything that you're trying to protect them from. And so I think that is really hard. But I still come back to, and I think I'm being unfair, but my part of this conversation is still that I think that you should have to put your name to something. And if you're not going to say something nice, then don't say it at all, kind of scenario. I always love the advice that someone gave me when they said, if you're going to print something, make sure that you are comfortable that it can go on the front page of the New York Times and that would be okay. And so I love that. And that's why I kind of feel still strongly that I think, again, I'll go back to, I agree, anonymous for a medical thing or so on and so forth. But I'm not a big believer in anonymous overall. Like, for example, when I'm on Amazon and I'm reading reviews of a product I'm about to buy, if it's anonymous, I don't actually pay attention to the review versus if it's a name. And yet it could still be just as fake. Someone could just put, Joe, Sally, Bill, or Mary. Doesn't mean that it's real. But in my mind, it authenticates that a real person's prepared to put their name beside it.
Well, for sure. But I think kind of tying these two concepts together, do we want to encourage kids to always have their name next to everything they do online? Like, I think it's good to instill kids with the realization that anything they do online can come back to bite them. And it's important to think about it that way. But adults make mistakes and kids definitely make mistakes. So to me, I think privacy for kids online is actually a really big deal, and that we should kind of not encourage them to be anonymous trolls, but encourage them to embrace privacy and try to keep themselves safe online through those mechanisms.
Totally agree that we need to, I don't know, I'm going to use the word train. We need to train them to be able to think about privacy and to think about, the things that you post today. So for example, you could post something today, but yet you're running for political office down the road. And now all of a sudden, it comes out and then you can't go for that position any longer because of what you posted, 20 years ago when you were, 12 years old, kind of scenario.
Oh, totally. And also, one more thing on the anonymous speech thing, too. I think it's important to think about, of course, there's anonymous trolls, and I don't dispute that at all. But I think one thing that everyone in their lives can go through something that's so difficult where they want to not be traceable. So if a woman's fleeing a marriage where she was abused, she's going to want to keep herself as anonymous as possible in all different circumstances. Same for the kid in that situation. If she's fleeing with a kid, that kid's going to want to be able to keep anonymous. Someone might have a job where they're not able to comment publicly about certain things, but they still want to engage politically online, maybe very mildly, maybe not. There's just so many different circumstances. Like I said, with medical issues, if you're seeking information about divorce, if you've dealt with other abuse in the past, there's just endless possible circumstances where I think that anonymous speech has a really good place.
Unfortunately, I can't believe 27 minutes have already passed. And when I started this conversation with you, I was adamant about not being anonymous. And I have to tell you, in the last 26 and a half minutes, I think you've changed my opinion to be more open about anonymous, and that it's not necessarily always negative. And so on behalf of all of our listeners and everyone here at Sirius XM, thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. And I think you're probably one of the first guests to ever change my opinion so quickly about something. So thank you about that.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I try to be convincing. That means a lot to me.
Thank you. And for all of you out there in Radioland, thank you for joining us on Cordially Yours. And I look forward to seeing you next time on the radio. Charles.